Alright folks, my name is Freyn, and today we're going to be taking a speculative look at the Gigantoraptor, based on that brand new dossier that was revealed earlier this morning. For anyone not keeping up, the Gigantoraptor will be a new creature in Ark Survival Ascended, exclusively on the Ragnarok map. Or should I say exclusively for a few hours, because I'm sure someone will create a mod that spawns it everywhere else, probably before most of us have even finished patching the game. But what's in the dossier, and what can we deduce from it? Well, firstly, the wild. Now it says its temperament is territorial, and other examples of this are things like the direbear or the Calicotherium. So obviously if you ever encountered those in the game, you know they're not going to come for you from the other side of a biome that you have to get incredibly close, basically within touching distance, before they get aggressive. So keep your distance and you'll be fine, but if you get close, it's going to come for you. Which isn't really surprising given its role, which has actually turned out to be very, very similar, or at least so far, it might be identical for all we know, but it's very, very similar to how it was proposed in the submissions. And obviously we can infer this from the rest of the text. Unless you're planning to raid its nest, you shouldn't let this creature's imposing size worry you. Gigantoraptor may be fiercely protective of its brood, but it's much more of a caregiver than a fighter. So it's big, it's extremely protective and territorial. If you go anywhere near where it lives, you're gonna have a bad time. Don't get me wrong, this theropod will use its sharp claws and surprising speed to defend its young when threatened. So a possible hint of the Mother's Fury buff that was mentioned in the submission, giving a boost to its capabilities when around young. But Gigantoraptor has a soft heart for young ones. It'll even take in the orphaned babies of rival species. So there we get our first hint of the baby feeding trough that was proposed. It's looking after all species, not just its own. So we move on to the domesticated aspects. Now for the bad news. To my knowledge, no one's been able to figure out how to tame an adult Gigantoraptor. Its unique disposition seems resistant to behavioral conditioning. So adults are a complete no-go. You cannot tame an adult. Now this is different from the proposal here. The proposal was that adults would be tamed via a sort of OSD style defense. Help them defend their nest from incoming predators, and if you were successful you'd get a mate pair of adults. They've gone the complete opposite direction here. Instead of getting a pair, you get none. Adults are a complete no-go. However, survivors bolder than me were able to sneak into nests to win the trust of their young, and they claim that reward is well worth the risk. So we're not stealing eggs, we're stealing babies. There's obviously going to be some sort of nest-like structure, whether it's a large, actual structure that you enter, or if it's just a nest on the ground in the same way that the wyverns, Deinonychus, etc. have their nests. Whatever it is, there's going to be babies inside. We already know that Acer will have wild babies for more animals. They're going to be all over the place. Clearly, these are going to be contained in a nest. That's how we tame it. It's the only way to tame it. Once mature to adulthood, your tamed Gigantoraptor will happily look after any of your tribe's young creatures, nurturing them and teaching them how to fight. So this implies that we're going to get the imprinting as well. That was one of the main features. It wasn't just a baby feeding trough, it wasn't just a Maywing replacement. It was going to be something that imprints. It brings in the functionality of some of the mods like the S Plus Nanny. And it looks like it's going to get that capability, teaching them how to fight. That implies to me a form of imprinting. Not that that's what we actually do during imprinting, we give them cuddles, food, walks, etc. But still, to me, that sounds like imprinting all of your young. It can even use its call to help you find orphaned baby animals out in the wild. So another ability there. Again, we mentioned that there's going to be more wild babies in Acer. It's not just things like the penguin or the Dinopithecus that have got babies wandering around. There's going to be babies for all sorts of species, and clearly we have an ability here we can use to locate them more easily. How that functions, we don't know. Maybe it'll be like the Parasaur, where you get a little blip when it detects something. Maybe it'll be like one of the light pets, where we get a little symbol in the corner saying, oh, baby nearby. Obviously, only so much we can get from a bit of text on the dossier, but certainly some way to locate the increased number of babies. And if you bring those orphans home, then your Gigantoraptor will happily add them to its brood. So again, it'll look after any baby you manage to get. But if it's helping us to locate them, presumably we can ride it. There is no saddle symbol on the Dossier, but presumably we can ride it to take it with us. It would be obviously a lot more hassle to just bring it around in tow and turn around and periodically, you know, ask it to check for babies for you. So we should be able to ride it, especially at that size. I would hope we can ride it. Gigantoraptor forms an inseparable bond with its young charges. Bring them into a fight together and they will defend each other and your tribe far more effectively than when apart. Now this here, to me, again, hints at imprinting. They fight more effectively together than when apart. Now obviously in the current game, when you imprint something, you get a small stat boost and a damage and defense boost when you are riding that specific creature. Obviously the Gigantoraptor isn't going to be riding one of them, but this could hint at a change to imprinting possibly, because normally it is the player who imprints on the baby. If this is doing the actual imprinting tasks for you, is it still maintaining that imprint to you, or are they now imprinted instead to the bird? Sort of a, you know, a slight downside to using that to imprint it instead of doing it yourself. Or more logically, I think, and more likely, is it just going to be an additional buff? They essentially get the imprint buff when their nanny or their surrogate parent is near. So if you ride them, you still get the buff, but it means that the unridden ones aren't worse than the ridden ones. But it certainly seems like an effective creature, and not just for sitting in base looking after the young. It certainly seems like for a boss fight you're going to want to bring one with you so you can really maximize the potential of your tames. It's no longer just going to be one Yuti and 19 dinos of choice. It's now going to be Yuti, Gigantoraptor, presumably 2 Gigantoraptors so that you have the mate boost on them to help keep them alive a bit longer, and then 17 dinos of your choice. But it should shake things up a bit. I know people have been really wanting some sort of substitute for the Maywing, which doesn't appear until Genesis. Something to help raise those babies that doesn't require you to be constantly online. And the added imprint features here should be really good. But another thing to take away from this is that, again, this is something very, very similar to the proposed abilities. There is the aberration vote running as I make this video, and obviously we are meant to be voting for the creature, not the design. And everyone always brings up the Dinopithecus, who, I wasn't around for this, but apparently the Dinopithecus had in its proposal the ability to wield guns, which it evidently didn't get. So that's always brought up as an example that we don't get what we asked for, and designs are completely different. But the Rhino was fairly similar, and this again sounds fairly similar. The Fasola-Sucus, on the other hand, completely different. It's more of a sand shark now, instead of a living trap. So who knows where the aberration creatures will go. If the devs like the idea, obviously they'll stick with it. It means if you're planning on submitting a creature, put a bit of thought into it. Go with something that's not brutally overpowered with 15,000 abilities. If you come up with a good idea, there's a good chance it gets entered. So what do you think of the Gigantoraptor? Are you excited? Are you looking forward to its implementation? Thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.